I'm Della Moss Spohr, and I'm from South Bend, Indiana originally, and now I live in Boca Raton, Florida. Manny Moss and I are first cousins. His father, I think, was Eliezer, and my father was Jacob, and they were one of, I can't remember if it was eight or, I think there were 8 kids in their family. We'd have to count on the tree. And so my father and Manny's father were brothers, and they come from eastern Czechoslovakia, from Brezov. And Manny, when he came to this country, he came to South Bend also. He came and he stayed at our house. I remember we had a big house. It was right near the center of town. There were railroad tracks in front of it. A train went hourly from Chicago to South Bend, and we lived right there. And we had a grocery store next door. And when Manny first came to this country, he worked in the grocery store and lived with us. And he was very nice. He had such a nice, gentle disposition, always.
From meeting him, could you tell that he had just been through something so like traumatic as the Holocaust, or was he?
No, you couldn't. Not that I recall. He didn't speak of it. He worked in the store. He ate with us, and we talked, and I don't recall any morbid conversations or anything like that.
During the time of World War II and the Holocaust, how much news was like relayed to like Americans about what was happening in Germany, what was happening with the camps?
Well, my father and mother lived in this big house, as I said, with my aunt and uncle. We lived together. 2 sisters had married 2 cousins. And they had a lot of relatives. You know, my father's had relatives still in Europe, and my mother and my aunt had relatives still in Europe, and my uncle had relatives. So one of the biggest parts of our life was trying to bring these people out, and if not bring them out, help them at least. And there was always money being collected among all the relatives, and even not the relatives, the other Jewish population, you know, that they were close with. And so there was always something going on to help the people in Europe. And of course, you know, it was always, it's said often, you know, how you don't throw food away, you don't waste food. That was almost every meal. You don't waste food because you have a lot of relatives in Europe who don't have any food, so you don't waste it. And our livelihood was a grocery store, which was right next door. So, you know, there was plentiful. My mother and my aunt talked a lot about their relatives, and I can remember several times when they would get telegrams from the Red Cross, you know, telling them that somebody had perished or somebody was missing, things of that sort. And they would sort of cry. They would almost like leave the room or leave the area where the rest of us were, and they would grieve. But it wasn't like the whole family would sit and grieve together. I mean, they would, but they sort of kept me and my sister, my cousins, away from it.
From that.
Yeah. So we didn't really realize the extent of it. I mean, I can remember in high school, probably at the end of high school, writing a little assignment on Teresen, I think it was called, Teresen, and it was a camp that the Germans used as a propaganda.
Model camp.
Yeah, a model camp where the people could draw pictures, and that was what I was really showing, was the pictures and the music, but not any of the horrors that went on there. No, I didn't really find out any more when Manny came or when Joe came.
We didn't talk about it.
Nobody talked about it.
Why do you think that was?
Well, for one thing, I think it was extremely painful. I mean, I can't imagine what it would be like to lose my mother and my sisters and brothers if I had any. You know, I mean, to see that happening right before my eyes, it would be more than I could bear, I think. And, you know, it was fresh in their minds. So I think that was one thing. And I think another thing is, like with Joe, he didn't tell his children about it, and that was already several years farther on. You know, he didn't want to talk about it with his children. And I think that's partially because he didn't want his children to be afflicted with the guilt and the associations that many people had. I mean, there's a lot of people who are half of what they could have been today, or whose lives have been really devastated by the stories that they know about their parents or their other people.